I just did an interview with Pierre Poilievre, who's going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada in all likelihood. And he chose to speak with me in depth instead of talking to the legacy media, let's say. And it was actually rather comical from my perspective because
everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
All the legacy media outlets in Canada had to play catch-up, which I contemplated with some degree of, inappropriate satisfaction. But there's something, so we had to talk about that because Poilievre had expressed some doubts about his performance in the discussion. He said there were many topics he didn't get to. And so we talked about that. And I said, well, the long-form podcast format can't be manipulated a priori successfully, because if you come to the podcast with a set of talking points and you stick to your script, you're going to get, first of all, no one will watch you. And I've seen this with political figures. This isn't a guess. I know this is the case. No one will watch you and all the comments will be negative. You have to come there knowing where you stand, but ready to follow the thread of the conversation wherever it goes. And to do that, you have to sacrifice the pre-planning. Yeah. Okay, so then we might look into that more deeply and we might say, well, now that video is predominating, let's say, over the written word, that means that might mean the reemergence of something like spontaneity over propaganda. Like that could be the case because the new media forms do prioritize spontaneity instead of preparation. Now, you can see that as a technological shift. Back when bandwidth was staggeringly expensive and every second on broadcast media cost a fortune, you could imagine that risk minimization was the name of the game and that every second had to be controlled. But that restriction is no longer present, even at all. And so what that might mean, and that's what you're referring to, is that an entirely new form of political discourse might emerge and that people who are capable of generating a certain degree of perspicacity and wisdom spontaneously are going to be prioritized over those who have a bent towards incentivized or instrumental manipulation. I mean, Poilievre could do that, right? He had a conversation with me. He got no questions ahead of time, none. And he was willing to go along with that. But it is really a completely different way of, now we've been talking to Democrats too, trying to get them on the podcast circuit. And the resistance so far has been the utter inability and unwillingness of people on the Democrat side to forego their pre-planned agenda with regards to a conversation. Right.
Some time ago, you said we were entering this era of new kings. You said it, I don't know when you started saying it, but you said it to me about a year ago. New kings, you said, and I clocked it and thought it was interesting. And now we're sort of seeing how that's playing out. The boundaries are shifting, kind of a sort of cybernetic gerrymandering as the space moves beyond geography and into something more conceptual, yet actual, in so much as it can be administrated and it can be controlled. Now, to your point about spontaneity, I wonder if it's in any way ultimately distinct from the sort of Socratic idea that the spoken word had a distinct authenticity
from the written.
Yeah,
I agree.
Word.
Well, and it was Socrates who decried that, if I remember correctly, right? He was afraid that if the written took primacy, that the concretization of thought would eliminate. I mean, I think Foucault wrote about that, as a matter of fact, in favor of Socrates' proposition that the spoken should take priority over the written. But it does have something to do with this paradoxical relationship between propagandizing and pre-preparation. And see, it isn't obvious to me that you can lie effectively, spontaneously in a conversation.
No, not necessarily continually. Now, you remember about 500,000 words ago, 10 minutes ago, at the beginning of our conversation, we both speak relatively quickly. I mentioned that an ever-present, omnipresent God, if God is the absolute creator, atemporal, aspatial, outside of the limitations of space and time, it struck me the other day as I was having one of these kind of transcendent experiences that I've been having since becoming Christian, that that God would be present in every moment and discernible in every interaction, that there would indeed be narrativizable lessons.
Discernment is the right word there, because that's what discernment is for. Discernment is to find the path where the sacred manifests itself in each moment.
Yeah, to detect or divine. To divine.
Yeah, to divine.
Where is it?
Yeah,
Where is the
to
divine?
feel it
Where
out.
is God?
Absolutely.
Like that other like divine as a transitive verb rather than as a description of sublime.
Yeah.
And so when to your point about how now you said that thing about new sovereigns ages ago, and I said ages ago after reading Martin Gurri's book The Revolt of the Public that there was an inevitability that independent media and the way that it Martin Gurri saw this much earlier than any of us. He saw I think he saw whoa, Napster, what that's done to the record industry. How's that going to play out? Wait a second. And then he saw Arab Spring, Occupy movement, Brexit, Trump, watching how institutions are unable to adjust to the new thermals and the new contours that emerge with this sudden, impactful and incursive instantaneous communication. I said, as an occupant of new media spaces like yourself, how long is it before inevitably the independent media and a new form of independent politics coalesce, align and emerge? We're seeing it now, that it will become so porous as to be to be without distinction. And it seems now that what
distinction are you referring to there exactly?
Media is this category, politics is this category.
Oh yeah, I see.
Those distinctions will
disappear. Well, Poilievre, for example, I think he's certainly been the most effective Canadian politician on this front, but he might be the most effective politician in the Western world at the moment in using new media. So one of the things he's done, for example, is write and produce 10-minute documentaries to educate Canadians about economic reality. He's done that very effectively. They're very high-quality documentaries, and he told me that he writes them and narrates them, which is, quite an interesting skill set, because that's quite divorced from typical politicking. But it is, the thing is the intermediaries, in some ways, the intermediaries are no longer necessary between the leaders and the populace. This is something that the MAGA and the MAHA types are trying to work out right now from a strategic perspective. It's like, we now have the opportunity to communicate directly to the public at indefinite length, right? Because also the technological constraints that made everything compressed into a 30-second soundbite, that's gone. And so then Poilievre has been very effective at just talking directly to the Canadian public, and that's why he won the Conservative leadership. And it's part of the reason, along with Trudeau's catastrophic failure, that he's going to be the next prime minister. But it is a sea change, and it is driven, in large part by this technological transformation.
This is the interview that Peterson was referring to. Pierre Poilievre kind of predicted the future right here, like deja vu, let's take a peek.
It will take some weeks to actually get a non-confidence vote onto the floor of the House of Commons. Then we'll see if Jagmeet Singh's latest promise of voting non-confidence was as insincere as his prior commitments to that effect.
When does his pension kick in?
In February. So he's now, basically, he said yesterday that he would put forward a non-confidence motion at the earliest opportunity. Well, that's likely to be March, which is...
Oh, that's convenient. Okay,
right
so that problem's off. So really,
that's right.
So March is the earliest, as far as you can see, that election could be called.
Singh will not vote non-confidence before he gets his pension, or at least he will not vote non-confidence in a way that sees the election happen before his pension kicks in. So we won't have an election before very late winter, early spring. Then there's the possibility that the Trudeau resigns and then goes to the Governor General and says we need to shut down Parliament, while the Liberal Party then chooses a new replacement, a Trudeau 2.0. And so there would be a leadership race. God knows how long that would drag on for.
You think approximately in March, no earlier than March, as far as you can foresee?
Yeah, probably. And during which time we'd continue to flounder and twist in the wind. And by the way, the Liberal media is all saying, well, surely you wouldn't want to trigger an election during the Liberal leadership race. Excuse me, the Canadian people are not obliged, 41 million people are not obliged to wait around while this party sorts out its shit. Like, these guys could have got rid of Trudeau a year and a half ago. They knew he was a disaster then. And now they say, well, we're low in the polls, so we have to get rid of him. Now, you didn't care when he was just depriving single mothers of food for their kids, or doubling housing costs, or unleashing crime in neighborhoods across the country. But now you're really concerned about getting rid of him because your poll numbers are down and you want to keep your job. Sorry, that's not a good reason to paralyze the entire country, in the face, by the way, of a major negotiation with the incoming U.S. president, who enters with a massive and powerful mandate, and a man who has proven that he can spot weakness from a mile away. So the country should not be forced to wait for the Liberal Party to clean up its own mess. They've had plenty of time to do that. What we need now is certainty, and the only way that can come is through an election so the people can decide.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
All right, gang, Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. Like, share, subscribe, get notified, all that. We're coming back and attacking this stuff when they get back in Parliament. I cannot wait. That's it. Like, share, subscribe, get notified. Check out some of the other videos. That's it. Aaron, Canadian Looney. We'll catch you next video. Thanks for watching this one. In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups. The globalists who sold out, and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.